Hey everyone, it's Lindsay, and I'm here today to share with you a few different ways you can add some texture to a clean and simple card design. Now, I will be using the Tailored Expression stamp set called Little Schoolhouse. This is no longer available anymore. I will try and link something similar to it, but this is one of my favorite stamp sets. I use it almost every back to school year, every teacher appreciation. This is one that I use all the time. But it is a clean stamp set, so I needed to go ahead and take out that black foam that's in my MISTI, and then I'm just taking the schoolhouse that's in this stamp set, and I'm just going to place that in the very top of my card panel, and I'm going to place that right in the center. Now, I used this design on a back to school card. However, I'm going to make a teacher appreciation card just to have on hand here. So instead of the little welcome sign that's in there as well as back to school, I'm just going to stamp the "You Are Appreciated" sentiment in this card. Now I'm just going to start out with the school stamp in there to keep it nice and simple, and I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I'll be doing some alcohol marker coloring on this. So this is what ink corresponds with my coloring medium. Now this is a red rubber stamp, so the first time I stamp this down, it's going to stamp perfectly. However, Memento ink just isn't a very dark black ink, so I'll ink this up again and stamp it down just to darken up those black lines and really give me a nice rich black color. So I went ahead and masked off that schoolhouse with a mask that I had already cut out and used on a card previously. Now I'm using the tree from the same stamp set that has little apples on it, and I want this to look like it is behind the schoolhouse. Because I stamped that schoolhouse first, it's going to be in the front, so anything I stamp now is going to be behind it. So I need that tree to be almost pushed up a little bit from the schoolhouse. You don't want the bottom ground lines the same as your schoolhouse line because you want it to appear as if it is truly behind the schoolhouse. So I just move that up a little bit towards the top, and I'll also stamp one on the right hand side of the schoolhouse. Again, I'm moving it up from the bottom of the schoolhouse just so it looks as if it is truly behind there. I'll go ahead and ink this up with the same Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I will just stamp this down. Now for my sentiment, I just mounted it on an acrylic block, and then I'll stamp it right below that schoolhouse in the center of the bottom of my cardstock panel. Now I wanted a little bit of a ground line in there, so I'm going to take my micron pen and my T-square ruler to draw in a horizon line right above those trees. Now this micron pen isn't supposed to be used with alcohol markers. However, I find that if you don't go over the lines with it and you just keep away from it a little bit, they don't bleed into it at all. So instead of buying another tool, this just works for me. So I'm going to be doing my coloring with alcohol markers because I'm going to add some texture to the trees to really help make this clean and simple card pop a little bit. So I'm using alcohol markers today, and for this technique you really do need to use these. So I'm starting with two different browns right now to color in the schoolhouse, and I'll be using quite a few browns on this card. So I tried to switch it up and really keep one of the same color in my different color browns, but I wanted to go ahead and just really keep some definition between different spaces. So for the main schoolhouse, I used a very light tan and a little bit darker brown to add some shading in there. And then for the roof on the schoolhouse, I'm using one brown, a very dark brown, and then I'll use that same dark brown for all of my edging around the windows. Now this stamp has some very fine details on it, so I really found myself having to use the very tip of the marker. So you can see I'm holding these almost straight up when I'm coloring, and that is just something that you have to practice at, and something that a lot of stamps these days you have to do with. Now for the door, I'm doing a red, and I also carried that red over to the apple on the right hand side and also one of the books on the left hand side. Now I used a little bit of darker red for the panels in the door just for a little bit of shading, and then I'll bring that darker red up to the apples in the tree. There are quite a few of these, but I'm not adding any shading or anything to them, and one layer of color does the trick because they're so small, so it wasn't that bad to color all those in. Now for the little drape, I used some green, and then I also brought that green over to the left hand side on one of the books. I'm using 2 different wine colors to color in the bricks on the bottom of the schoolhouse, and then I'll use 2 grays on the step in front, and also that book, last little book on the left hand side. Now I have a little bit of a lighting change here. It has been a struggle this past week. I've had 2 birthdays and a back to school and everything else going on, so it's been a struggle to find time to video any videos at all. But I have a little bit of a lighting change because I'm filming at night now. But for these trees, I'm going to color them in with a very light chartreuse green. And then for some texture, this is where it gets fun. I'm just going to press my marker tip down and create leaf shapes with these. I started off with a mid-tone green, and then I'm coming in with a much darker olive green, and I'm going to add more of those leaf shapes to this. Then I will come back in with that lighter color and just very randomly go over these leaves to blend them out just a little bit. This is going to add so much texture to these trees and really almost bring them to life and add leaf-like shapes to them so they look more realistic. Now for the trunks, I just did these in a couple different brown colors, and then I'll just move on to the ground. Now for the ground, it will be green as well, but I really don't want to take away from that texture that I added to the trees, so I'm just going to go ahead and use just 2 different colors on these, and I'm adding a little bit darker for some shading, and then I'll come back in with that lighter tone and really just blend those out. And that adds a little bit of texture as well to this card and some interest to this clean and simple card. Now for the sky, I'm using one color blue, and I'm just really going to color in the sky. It's going to appear streaky because I really want it that way, so I'm not going to add too many layers of this blue so it looks more lifelike. Now I'll go ahead and give you a close-up of the finished coloring, and you can really see those little leaf images in that tree really give it so much texture. Now for even more texture to this card, I'm going to take some Tailored Expression Clouds dies, and I'm going to cut some white felt. Now I use the felt that you can find at your local craft store in the kids section, and to get this to cut, I just run it through once, and then I'll run it back through again, so run it through twice essentially, and that just gives it enough pressure to really not smush down your felt so much, but it also cuts cleanly out, as you can see here. Now I'm just going to go ahead and put this card together. I've added some double-sided adhesive to the back of my colored panel. I will go ahead and pull off the back side of the paper, and then I'll just put this down onto an A2 top folding card base that is white. Now you'll see whenever I go to stick this down, it goes on just a little bit crooked, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and bring out my long blade scissors, and I'll just trim off the edges to make them nice and flush. Now I use my scissors just because I find it a little bit quicker and it's easier for me to just pick these up and use them. However, if you're a little bit scared of doing this, you can also use an emery board or a sanding block to just rub away the little extra you have hanging off the edge here until it's flush with your card base. But that's just a little trick in case any one of your card panels goes on a little wonky on your card base. You don't have to throw the thing out. Just trim off those little side edges that aren't completely flush. Now for the clouds, the best way I found to adhere them was with this same double-sided adhesive. It is a little tricky to get the backing paper off of this once you get the front side stuck to the felt. However, if you use a bone folder to kind of burnish it onto the cloud, that makes it a little bit easier to get that backing paper off. So you can see here I'm just taking that 1/4 of an inch iCraft adhesive, and I'm just putting little bits of it down onto the cloud. Then I'll take my bone folder and just rub it pretty firmly over the back of that adhesive. And then it still is a little tricky to get off, but just give it a little bit of time and it eventually will come off for you. And then I just stuck one cloud right on the left hand side and the other one on the right hand side at the top of the schoolhouse. And that finished off the card for today. This was a very clean and simple card, but I added quite a bit of texture just to give it that extra little bit of something. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and as always, I will leave you with this close-up and just a few pictures. For more information and the supply list, you can head to my blog, craftingwhilekaffeinated.wordpress.com. The link is in the description box below, as well as that eye in the top right hand corner. That will get you there too, as well as a few more videos that might interest you. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and happy crafting!